You're not getting poorer because you spend money the wrong way. You're getting drained by a business model that quietly takes your money little by little without leaving fingerprints. And the scary part is, you've already seen the signs. You just didn't know what you were looking at. If you feel like everything around you is getting more expensive but worse in quality, that's not your fault. It's not because you suck at managing money. It's not because you're careless with spending. And it's not just inflation. You're living inside a quiet financial machine where big investment firms make money by squeezing every dollar out of the companies you trust and out of your wallet. Its name is private equity. And once you understand how it works, you'll realize a lot of things you thought were random are actually part of a plan. In this video, I'm going to show you how this model actually works, why it makes prices go up while quality goes down, and most importantly, what you can do to protect your money before the damage hits you. Let's begin. You know, private equity sounds like something super technical, but the truth is, it's way simpler than it looks. Picture this. There's a bakery you love. You go there all the time. Good bread, familiar staff, nice vibe. One day, a group of people walks in and says, "We want to buy this entire place, not just a few loaves, not just a small share. They want the whole thing. The recipes, the staff, the kitchen, the brand, the customers, everything." That's private equity. They don't buy a little piece. They buy the whole company. But that's not the most important part. The real question is, what do they buy it for? When you buy something you love, you might want to keep it long term. Private equity is different. They don't buy because they love the brand. They don't buy because they love the product. They buy because they want to make money fast. And the way they make money fast is usually not by making the bakery better. Most of the time, it's by tightening everything they can tighten. So keep this in mind. Private equity equals a group that buys entire companies, takes full control, and has only one real goal: to get a big profit, fast. And this is where their model starts touching your wallet. When a private equity firm buys a company, they can change almost anything. They replace the managers. They change suppliers. They change how things are sold. They change the pricing. And sometimes, they change the soul of the brand. Now, imagine this. Tomorrow, a stranger buys the house you're renting. They raise your rent a bit. They cut back on repairs. They replace solid doors and windows with cheaper ones. You'd feel it immediately. You'd know your life just got a bit worse. Private equity does the same kind of thing, but to big brands we all use every day. And the impact spreads out across millions of people, not just one family. And the wild part is, most of them never hear the words private equity even once. They only feel the fallout. Have you ever noticed a brand you loved suddenly changing in a way you hate? Smaller portions, higher prices, stressed out staff. Most people think, maybe the company is just struggling. But sometimes, that's not it. Sometimes, it's a sign that a private equity firm just took over. If you've ever felt that, or seen a brand you loved suddenly go downhill, share your story in the comments. Your experience might help a lot of other people see what they've been missing. Private equity isn't pure evil, but when they buy a company, they're not buying it to protect the brand. They're buying it to extract money fast, and by almost any method that works. And when they do that, your wallet is usually the first place that feels the impact. To really understand why things around you start changing, we need to look at a part almost nobody talks about: how private equity actually buys a company in the first place. Because that's where most of the damage really begins. Now, to understand how private equity can change a company so quickly, you need to know one key secret. A secret almost nobody explains to regular people. It has a fancy name: leveraged buyout, or LBO. But don't let the name scare you. The idea is very simple. Imagine this. You want to buy a car that costs $100, but you only have $20 in your pocket. What do? You borrow $80 from your friends. Then you buy the car like you were rich. Now here's the twisted part. After you buy the car, you turn to the car and say, "Hey, from now on, you are going to pay back that loan for me." You don't pay it back. You make the car itself pay the debt you took out to buy it. Sounds insane, right? But that is pretty much how private equity buys companies. In America, every single day, they put in a small amount of their own money. They borrow the rest. Then they push that entire debt onto the company they just bought. One simple line to remember. Private equity borrows money to buy the company. Then the company is the one stuck paying it back. Let's say there's a company you like called Sunny Shoes. It's worth $100 million. The private equity firm only puts in $20 million of their own money. The other $80 million? They borrow it. After the deal is done, they do a bit of financial magic. They move the entire $80 million debt onto Sunny Shoes. Sunny Shoes goes from being a normal company to a company that suddenly carries $80 million of debt that it never chose to borrow. It's like waking up one morning and finding out someone took out a huge loan in your name and now you are the one who has to pay it back. And if that still feels a little abstract, think about Toys R Us. It was taken over in a classic private equity deal and loaded up with billions in debt. Most of the cash the company made went to paying interest, not to fixing stores, not to improving the experience, and not to competing online. Kids didn't suddenly stop wanting toys. The company just couldn't breathe under the weight of a loan it never really chose. And in the end, it collapsed under that debt. And Toys R Us wasn't some isolated case. This same pattern has quietly unfolded in dozens of well-known companies, some of them brands you still use today, and most people never realized what happened behind the scenes. And this is where the impact hits your wallet for the first time. Because once a company is buried in debt it never wanted, every decision it makes from that point on is no longer about serving customers. It's about surviving the debt. The more debt a company carries, the more desperate it becomes to squeeze out cash. So, what does it do? It lays people off. It cuts quality. It raises prices. It delays maintenance. It switches to cheaper ingredients. It shrinks product sizes. It sells off buildings and assets. It shuts down locations. It does whatever it takes to generate enough money to service that debt. Debt doesn't pay itself. So who pays in the end? You, the customer. Here is a simple way to lock it. In your mind, private equity borrows, the company repays, and you pay by living in a world that's more expensive and worse in quality. In everyday life, this looks like you see your rent go up by $150, but service gets worse. Chances are, your building was just bought. In a debt-fueled deal, you see your favorite restaurant raise prices by 15% and shrink portions. That's not bad luck. That's the debt asking for money. You see the only grocery store in your neighborhood shut down? That might be debt coming due. This LBO debt doesn't show up on your news feed. It shows up in your monthly bills, your quality of life, your time wasted, in slow, understaffed services. And this is just phase one of the game. Private equity has many other ways to pull money out of a company and out of you that you never see directly. If you already think the debt part sounds dangerous, wait until you see what they do next. Debt is only the first move. They have an entire playbook designed to pull out money fast from the company, and eventually, from your pocket. Now that you know private equity buys companies mostly with borrowed money, the next question is, how do they get that money back fast and still make a huge profit on top? This is the part most Americans never actually see, but they feel it every week, every grocery run, every meal out. Let's walk through what they do. First, they cut staff, fewer people, more work. When a company is loaded with debt, the first lever private equity pulls is layoffs. Fewer employees, lower payroll, more cash to pay interest. But what happens when you cut too many people? Lines get longer. Service gets slower. Staff gets more stressed. Mistakes go up. The customer experience gets worse. You've probably seen this already. Fast food chains, casual dining, retail, places that used to run smoothly now feel constantly understaffed. If you've ever asked yourself, why is service getting worse everywhere? This is reason number one. Second, they cut costs, cheaper inputs, worse products. The next move hits your wallet even harder. They switch to cheaper stuff while keeping prices the same, or even raising them. For example, fries are smaller, sandwiches are thinner, burgers have less meat, pizza has more dough and less topping, drinks have more sugar and less real fruit. You're paying what you used to pay, sometimes more, but you're getting less. That difference? That's profit going to the private equity owners. Third, they raise prices simply because they can. What's the fastest way to boost revenue? Raise prices. Not always because costs went up, not always because of inflation, but because they need cash quickly. When a brand gets bought out, you'll often see prices jump within 6-12 months. For example, a $12 meal becomes $15. A $9 medication becomes $13. Rent goes from $1,200 to $1,400. A $20 gym membership becomes $30. People look at that and say, yeah, inflation is crazy. But a lot of the time, that's not just inflation. That's PE inflation, private equity-driven inflation. Fourth, they sell assets, selling the house, then renting it back. This one feels strange to regular people, but it's standard in private equity, and this next move is something you've probably seen without realizing it. They do something called a sale-leaseback. The company owns its building. Private equity sells the building for a lump sum of cash. Then the company rents the same building back. If you want a real-world example of this playbook, look at Red Lobster, a brand millions of Americans grew up with. The chain sold off many of the buildings it used to own, bringing in quick cash for the owners. But after that, those same locations had to be rented back. On paper, it looked like a clever financial move. In practice, it meant higher fixed costs, more pressure on the business, and eventually, what customers felt directly: higher prices, smaller portions, and burned-out staff. And none of that happened because people suddenly stopped liking seafood. It happened because the financial structure behind the business changed overnight. So what happens? The private equity firm gets a big pile of cash right now. The company is stuck paying rent forever. And who pays for that rent? In the end, customers through higher prices. You thought the company was short on money? Not really. They just sold the house, took the cash up front, and pushed the ongoing cost into the future right onto you. Fifth, they pushed the company to borrow even more debt, more fees. This part is wild. Private equity forces the company to take on more loans, not to grow, not to innovate, but so the firm can collect fees. It usually looks like this. The company borrows $10 million. The private equity firm charges a $1 million transaction fee. The company only gets $9 million. In reality, but still owes the full $10 million plus interest. So private equity gets paid up front, the company gets more debt, and you get higher prices. Sixth, they drain cash through special dividends. This is the final extraction. Private equity pays itself a special dividend, a big payout using the company's own cash. Where does that money come from? From the same pile that could have gone into better quality, upgraded equipment, better wages, repairs and maintenance, new technology. Instead, that money leaves the company and goes to the owners. And you as the end customer pay for it through worse service, worse products, higher prices. Private equity doesn't need the company to live a long, healthy life. They just need it to survive long enough for them to take out as much cash as possible. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, so the company gets loaded with debt, staff gets cut, quality falls. But who actually takes the real hit? In all of this, the answer is the people with the least power. The people who never sat in the boardroom, never signed the acquisition deal, but live inside the consequences every day. Let's break it down. Workers, more work, less security. The first punch almost always lands on employees. When private equity cuts staff to save money, here's what happens. People lose their jobs. The ones left have to do 2-3 jobs. Shifts get longer, pay barely moves, stress and burnout jump. Mistakes become more common. If you've ever worked in a restaurant, supermarket, warehouse, or hospital, you probably know this feeling. Fewer people, more customers, more pressure. And when workers are exhausted and overwhelmed, service falls apart. Who feels that next? Customers. Normal families paying more, getting less. For a middle-class family in the US, private equity shows up in the weekly grocery bill, utility bills, rent, healthcare costs, eating out on weekends. When prices go up, portions shrink, quality drops, their budget gets shaved down bit by bit. Instead of being able to save $300, $400 a month, now they're lucky to save $50, $100, money that could have gone into an emergency fund gets swallowed by things that feel like more expensive, but worse. And the dangerous part is, a lot of people blame themselves. I must be bad with money. I must be budgeting wrong. When, in reality, a huge part of the problem comes from systems in the background that they never got to see. It's not a personal failure. It's a structural game you were never invited to understand. Communities and neighborhood stores disappear. Food deserts appear. When private equity shuts down underperforming locations, they're not just closing stores, they're shutting down the nearest place to buy food, part of the social life of the neighborhood, a handful of local jobs. In some areas, when the only supermarket closes, people have to drive a long way just to find fresh food. That's how food deserts are created. Places where getting basic, fresh groceries is surprisingly hard even in a wealthy country. Renters higher rent, worse living conditions. When private equity moves into housing, you usually see rent going up, new random fees being added, slower repairs, maintenance requests ignored, buildings slowly falling apart. Tenants on the ground floor don't know anything about LBOs. All they know is, rent went up again this year. The AC's been broken for 2 weeks and nobody's come to fix it, and a big chunk of their paycheck is quietly flowing out as interest and dividends to investors they'll never meet. Patients and the elderly, where mistakes cost more than money. When this model moves into healthcare, things get even more serious. Fewer nurses per patient, fewer staff. In nursing homes, less time per person. In this industry, cost cutting isn't just annoying, it can become life-threatening. One nurse taking care of 6 patients is not the same as one nurse taking care of 12. A nursing home that's understaffed doesn't just give bad service, it creates real risk for the people living there. So, who still wins? While all this is happening, workers are being laid off, families are stretching every dollar, neighborhoods are losing stores, renters are paying more for less, patients are waiting longer. On the other side, private equity firms are collecting fees, cashing in dividends, selling off assets for profit, and if the company collapses, they've often already gotten their money out. That's why this model is so controversial. When everything falls apart, normal people lose almost everything, while the people behind the model often walk away with a profit. And the sad thing is, all of this damaged job losses, closed stores, higher prices should have been enough to stop the model in its tracks. But it didn't. It kept going. It got bigger. So after seeing all that, you might think, surely this model has to fail. It causes so many problems. But here's the shocking part. Private equity isn't shrinking. It's growing, faster, and it's moving into things American families literally can't live without. Why? If everything you've heard so far already feels heavy, you're not alone. But to understand why this model doesn't collapse, why it actually keeps expanding, we need to zoom out for a moment. Let's walk through 5 simple reasons. 1. Cheap money for many, many years. For more than a decade, the U.S. lived in a world of extremely low interest rates. Imagine being able to borrow $1 and only having to pay a few extra cents in interest. That's what it was like for private equity. They could borrow billions at very low cost. And if borrowing is cheap, they can buy more. A lot more. If you could borrow almost free money to buy companies, what would you do? You'd buy. Then, buy more. Then buy again. Low interest rates gave private equity superpowers. They could snap up assets before anyone else even reacted. 2. Big money backing them: pension funds and universities. Most people don't realize this. A lot of the money private equity uses to buy companies comes from ordinary people's retirement funds, pension funds, 401k plans, major universities like Harvard, Yale, and others. They all pour tens of billions of dollars into private equity because the returns are high. So, does private equity ever really run out of money? Almost never. Which means, in a strange way, part of your own future retirement savings might be used to buy the very companies you shop at and then push prices up on you. 3. Weak companies are easy targets. When a company is already struggling, sales are down, costs are up, debt is high, competition is tough, they become easy to approach with a tempting offer. Well, buy your company. We have the cash. Just like when you're personally short on money, you're more likely to accept a bad deal. Struggling companies are perfect targets. Private equity buys them cheap, loads them with more debt, pulls cash out. Who pays for the fallout? Customers, with worse service. Employees, with job cuts. 4. Less real competition. Many brands, one owner. You might think you have 10 choices, but 8 of them might belong to the same parent group. For example, 5 different restaurant chains, one real owner. 3 shoe brands, run by the same investment firm. 4 senior care brands, one fund behind them. When real competition drops, it gets easier to raise prices without losing customers. You think you're choosing, but a lot of the time, you're just switching between different logos owned by the same people. 5. The law moves slower than the game. Private equity is very good at staying ahead of regulation. They evolve their strategies faster than lawmakers can react. Regulators can investigate. New rules can be written and enforced. By the time rules start catching up, they've already moved into new industries: healthcare, housing, childcare, food, groceries, retail. These are not extra industries. These are what people need to live. And once they move into these areas, there's nowhere left for the average American wallet to hide. After hearing all of this, you might be asking yourself, so, what about me? What can I actually do to protect myself, my family, and my money? That's the most important question. Knowing the problem is only half of it. The real power is in how you respond. You can't control the whole economy, but you can control your moves inside it. A lot of these changes happen quietly, but protecting yourself is often much simpler than it looks. You don't need a PhD in finance to push back, you just need a few habits that stack up over time. Here are 5 financial survival skills. Small steps that can make a big difference over time. 1. Learn to spot it early. See it early. Dodge it early. Private equity will never email you and say, "Hey, we just bought your favorite brand." But they leave fingerprints. Here are 5 signs a company you use might have just been taken over or heavily restructured. 1. Prices jump quickly, with no clear explanation. 2. Portions get smaller, packaging gets thinner. 3. Quality drops in a noticeable way. 4. Fewer staff, slower service, more stress everywhere. 5. Multiple locations close within a short time. If you see 2 or 3 of those at the same time, there's a good chance you're looking at the after effects of a takeover. Just recognizing that puts you ahead of most people. Knowing what's happening is the first step to protecting your wallet. 2. Don't be overly loyal. Choice is your power. You don't owe any brand your loyalty if they're raising prices, cutting quality, understaffing their stores, and expecting you to just deal with it. Private equity relies on one thing, that customers will keep buying out of habit. But you don't have to. If a brand stops serving you well, move on. The faster you switch, the more pressure you put back on the model that's hurting you. 3. Support local businesses when you can keep money in your community. Local businesses usually don't have to hit quarterly profit targets for Wall Street, aren't being forced to cut quality to satisfy investors, aren't buried in tens of millions of dollars in acquisition debt, aren't paying giant special dividends to a private and individuals. Equity owner. Most of them just want to survive and serve their customers well. When you buy from them, your money stays in your city. Service is often better. The community stays stronger. Fewer local shops get shut down. You're not just buying a product, you're reinforcing the ecosystem you actually live in. 4. Spread out your spending. Don't let one owner own your entire life. Most people don't realize the 4 fast food chains they rotate between might be owned by one firm. The 3 shoe brands they buy might share the same parent. Multiple senior care brands often owned by the same group. It looks like choice, but a lot of it is illusion. You don't have to overthrow the whole system. You just need to avoid feeding the same group over and over. Try different places. Mix up the brands you buy from. Don't become dependent on one corporate group. Spreading your spending equals spreading your risk. 5. Create a simple survival checklist for your spending. I want you to have a mental filter every time you spend money. Before you commit to a brand long term, ask yourself, 1. Have prices gone up unusually fast? 2. Has quality clearly dropped? 3. Is service worse than it was a few months ago? 4. Does it look like they've cut staff? 5. Have you heard rumors or news about them being bought or restructured? If at least 3 of those are yes, you should seriously consider switching brands, switching stores, switching providers. A survival guide mindset doesn't mean living in fear. It means recognizing the signals and reacting before the damage piles up on you. You can't control whether private equity buys a company, but you can control whether they get to keep taking more money from you. That's real power. Every person has their own way of protecting their wallet when everything is getting more expensive and quality is falling. What about you? Do you have a habit, a rule, or a little trick that helps you keep your spending under control? Share it in the comments because your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to get through a tough time. When you look back at everything we've just gone through, how private equity buys companies, loads them with debt, pulls cash out of them, and leaves the fallout for workers and customers, you start to see something. A lot of what you thought was bad luck or random is actually part of a pattern. And once you see that pattern, you can't unsee it. You'll start noticing it in your monthly bills, the smaller portions on your plate, slower service, the empty store down the street, the unexplained price hikes. And once you start seeing these patterns, everyday life suddenly makes a lot more sense, not scarier, just clearer. But the point of understanding this isn't to make you scared. It's to help you get ready, to keep you from being passive, to help you protect what matters most, your family, your wallet, and the future you're trying to build. Understanding how the world really works is a long journey. And if you want to keep walking that path with more clarity and less fear, I'm here for that. If this video helped you see what's going on around you a little more clearly, consider subscribing to the channel so every week you get one more perspective that helps you protect your money and your life. The more you understand, the stronger you become, and the less this system can quietly take from you. I'll see you in the next video.